Scientists tell us that the Earth's climate is changing faster than at any point in the history of modern civilisation through human-induced global warming. The resulting weather extremes cross all borders socially, geographically and generationally. We live in a world shaped by the decisions of our ancestors, and the decisions we make today will decide the kind of world that we pass on to future generations. And so, on behalf of the Diocese of Lincoln and the Univesity of Lincoln, we want to invite you to a conference that seeks to navigate ways that science and the Church together can be leaders, both in caring for creation and measuring the effectiveness of our actions. With our companion Diocese of Polynesia, we want to share experiences from islands already in crisis and hopefully find new pathways to action. The conference is intended to be collaborative in nature, weaving science and theology and featuring leading voices from around the world. Here's just a few of them.
Moana is an ancient indigenous word for the ocean. The three island states, Tuvalu, the Marshall, Kiribati, is already named as the top three among the five as the most vulnerable island states in the world. They are right at our doorstep. They are within our family. We are already affected. And what we have learned from there is not to cry out with pain and make people feel sorry for us. We speak out because we know the value of the gift. Learning from the cathedral in Paris that was on fire, the people came for the first time in France to realize a gift that was always there, but because there is a leftover, and you come to see, like the word that says, we only know the value when it is lost. The cry and the call from the Pacifica is a call to treasure God's gift of the planet Earth. What is now happening, the reality to Polynesia, is also happens here. Lincoln and Polynesia, in some part of your diocese, is very much coastal, rural, and actually will be affected, which is, in my argument, is already affected by climate change. The whole working together through the invitation of the Bishop of Lincoln is to allow us to pull together and bring a voice with the enrichment of science through the University of Lincoln. Before, we took things for granted, and now we will speak with passion and say, we know the value. And it's better to have half-full class with deep appreciating of what God has given than carry on with life full class and take things for granted. We have good news to proclaim to the world, and that is where Lincoln, Polynesia and the University of Lincoln are passionate to offer something as our contribution to the climate change, like what other contributions in different parts of the world do.
So I'm Edward Hanna, Professor in Climate Science and Meteorology in the School of Geography, University of Lincoln. So my role is involved in doing research and teaching in climate science, so particularly looking at the effects of changes that humans are having on the climate system. We've got a newly installed weather station on the roof of the Isaac Newton building. We're logging different weather conditions such as temperature, humidity, rainfall, wind speed, and the strength of the energy from the sun and so on every 5 minutes. So there's hundreds and thousands of these weather stations all around the world, and together they can be used to build up a picture of how the weather and climate, so the average weather conditions over a period of some years, how those vary, and that tells us in turn how we're affecting the climate system. So it's a very useful body of data internationally. I do a lot of analysis of data sets, looking at how the climate is varying and changing. So looking at, for example, warming in Greenland, how the ice sheet is responding to climate change, but also how, as it melts, the ice sheet is in turn affecting climate change regionally, and also with things like the jet stream further south of Greenland, that then can affect extreme weather events over the North Atlantic and areas such as the UK. I've been really very excited to have been out to Greenland and been involved in fieldwork a few times. So I've actually seen at first hand how much the ice is actually melting. So it's quite exciting, but also quite scary in terms of how we're affecting the environment. So Polynesia and Lincolnshire face similar challenges regarding climate change and environmental pollution, sea level rise. Parts of those regions are relatively low-lying, so close to sea levels, so they're quite vulnerable to even relatively small changes. If you have a few tens of centimetres or a metre rise in sea level, that can have a big effect on coastal communities. And so we're seeing more extreme events in mid-latitudes, so floods and droughts and certain types of storms, hurricanes further south in the tropical regions. I think it's really important that members of the public and community leaders get involved with the University of Lincoln and the Diocese of Lincoln in trying to address some of these challenges. So actually it's quite a unique opportunity to bring a large number of different groups of people together who perhaps wouldn't normally be in the same forum. So collectively coming together in the Moana conference, we can actually begin to address and take practical action.
I'm Sarah Hemstock and I'm Programme Leader for Geography. So I first visited Tuvalu in 2003. Tuvalu is a very tiny nation state with between 10,500 to 12,000 people living there. So it represents 26 square kilometres of land spread over 1 million square kilometres of ocean. So it's got an enormous economic zone in the Pacific, but a very tiny nation in terms of land and population. So when I first went there, I'd learned at uni about climate change and sea level rise. I thought, like, sea level rising would wash over the land, but in Tuvalu, because it's a coral atoll, it actually bubbles through the surface of the land. Here is the airstrip, and that's at any tide. That was in the king tide, but any tide over 3.6 metres will have some degree of flooding on Funafuti. Over the years I was working there, we went from having potable drinking water in the ground, so that's fresh water you can take out the ground and drink, and just through 10 centimetres of sea level rise, there's no longer any potable drinking water anywhere in Tuvalu. We had a very large project that looked at education for climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction in 15 different countries across the Pacific. The basic finding from interviewing people in countries that they wanted a qualification that is recognisable internationally. So one of the things we did there was look at disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation and called it resilience. And we found that they wanted the formal training aspect so that their qualifications would be recognised by the agencies that then come in after a disaster to help. I'll be talking about how education has a massive role to play in responses to climate change, and how people in the Pacific view climate change as a slow-acting disaster. Lincolnshire faces almost the same impacts of climate change that is happening right now in the Pacific. There are many places in Lincolnshire that are at risk due to sea level rise. The tides literally are turning on Lincolnshire. We're going to lose land. It's going to be a battle that will hopefully be fought and won, but in most cases we're going to have to let nature take its course. I'd advise anybody with any interest in climate change, they need to attend this conference, definitely. They can also help with linkages and networks across Lincolnshire and meet people from other communities that are facing similar problems and see, you know, share problems and share solutions. I think that's what this conference will be about, and that's why it's important for people to attend.
Hi, I'm Mark from the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust. We own and manage 99 nature reserves across the county, but we believe that the Diocese of Lincoln has an opportunity of equal magnitude for helping the recovery of nature in Lincolnshire. The Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust has been active in over 22 areas of church land over the last 5 years. That includes 15 sites, churchyards and community meadows, where we've been working with local volunteers in practical conservation tasks. We've lost so much of our wildlife since the last 2 generations that there's now a very real danger. Our children will inherit a countryside that is no longer the life-giving ecosystem it once was. They've lost their natural heritage, and that marks the sounds, the colours and the seasons of their home. But there is a very real opportunity to rekindle the wildlife in sacred spaces like here at High Toynton. And if we can do that, we can reignite a celebration of life in all its forms, which every community can share.
Originally we thought we were going to make the whole churchyard wildflowers, but that was actually too much siding for Mark. But also we had complaints only from 1 or 2 people, but they felt that the churchyard was looking too untidy. It's actually quite a different concept to have wildflowers and have them blooming in God's magnificence than it is to have a very mown, controlled, organised churchyard.
So down here at wildflower level, here in early June, you're beginning to see the first few flowers emerging, forming a carpet of broad leaves, which is much more interesting than just grass. Here are the downy leaves of rough hawkbit, which will emerge as golden yellow flowers, not unlike dandelions, but really good providers for solitary bees and their relatives. So here we are at Red Hill. It's the Coronation Meadow, which is a restoration project. So the plants you're seeing here were the source of seed for the wildflowers that were planted into High Toynton Churchyard at St John the Baptist, and in a way we've tried to create in microcosm the scene that you can see here at a larger scale. If you want to become involved in coming to a place like this, being inspired by it when it's in flower, then returning to it when the seeds are ripening and hand harvesting those seeds, seeing that through to propagating those plants and then receiving a delivery of those very plants that you help to grow and planting them in to your sacred spaces for the whole community to enjoy. Well, that's an opportunity we hope to be able to extend in time. We very much hope that the Lincoln Diocese sees its local wildlife trust as a future partner in delivering nature's recovery across the county through the design and the implementation of the new environment policy. And we very much look forward to working with you in partnership to deliver on the aims of the 5th Mark of Mission.
So come and join us at the University of Lincoln on the 30th and 31st of August, followed by a service at Lincoln Cathedral on the 1st of September, where we will begin the process of offsetting the conference's carbon footprint by planting trees across Lincolnshire and launching our own diocesan environmental policy. In addition, on the evening of the 31st of August, a footprint dinner will take place in Lincoln Cathedral's glorious chapter house. Lincolnshire chef and entrepreneur Sam Owen of the Salted Orange Food Company will be showcasing a 3-course sustainably sourced menu and will demonstrate how low carbon footprint menus can be achieved. We're hoping that you will very much want to join with us.